Welcome to Universal Understanding, where we explore the profound teachings of Buddhism and how they can bring deeper clarity, peace, and wisdom into our lives. Whether you're new to Buddhism or have been studying it for years, this channel is here to guide you on a journey toward greater understanding. In today's video, we are diving into one of the most important aspects of Buddhist philosophy, the path that leads us toward true wisdom. Wisdom in Buddhism isn't just about accumulating knowledge. It's about seeing beyond the surface, understanding the true nature of reality, and, most importantly, transforming our lives through this deep understanding. Now, when we talk about wisdom, what exactly do we mean? And how do we cultivate wisdom that goes beyond mere intellectual knowledge? How do we integrate these profound insights into our everyday lives? These are the questions we will explore together. But before we dive in, let me share with you a piece of wisdom from the Buddha himself. Just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life. This speaks to the essence of what we will explore today. The spiritual life is a path that leads to wisdom, and it is this path that transforms us from ordinary beings into beings with profound understanding. Let me share with you a story from the life of the Buddha to illustrate this. Once, a man came to the Buddha, frustrated and filled with doubt. He asked, "Master, how can I find peace? I am troubled by the chaos of the world. How do I see clearly? How do I find wisdom in my life?" The Buddha smiled and responded with a question. "If you are carrying a burden that is too heavy to bear, what would you do?" The man, puzzled, replied, "I would put it down." The Buddha then said, "So too, wisdom comes when we learn to put down the burdens of the mind, the attachments, the anxieties, the false beliefs. Only then can you see clearly." And so, the journey toward wisdom in Buddhism begins with letting go of our attachments, our false views, and the illusions that cloud our vision. In today's video, we will explore how to walk this path of wisdom, step by step, and discover the freedom that comes with it. Now that we've laid the foundation, let's delve deeper into the essence of wisdom in Buddhism and how we can cultivate it in our daily lives. The essence of wisdom in Buddhism. In Buddhism, wisdom, or prajna, is not just about accumulating information or memorizing teachings. True wisdom is about seeing the world as it really is. It's about understanding the impermanent nature of all things, the interconnectedness of life, and recognizing that suffering arises from our attachment to things that are temporary and fleeting. Let's break this down further. Impermanence. This is the first key principle that leads us to wisdom. Everything in life is constantly changing. The moment we try to hold on to something too tightly, it slips through our fingers. Whether it's our relationships, our careers, or our own bodies, nothing stays the same forever. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we resist this truth and try to hold on to what is impermanent. Let me illustrate this with a simple example. Think of a flower blooming. It is beautiful, vibrant, full of life, but no matter how much we admire it, that flower will eventually wither and die. Now, this isn't something to be sad about. It's a natural process, but we often suffer when we fail to accept it. We cling to the beauty, the moment, and forget that everything is in a state of constant flux. The Buddha's teachings encourage us to embrace this impermanence, to appreciate things as they are without attachment. When we let go of our need to control and possess, we free ourselves from suffering. Next, we come to interconnectedness, the understanding that everything is connected. Nothing exists in isolation. Our lives are intertwined with others, with nature, and with the universe itself. This insight opens the door to compassion, as we realize that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. Imagine this. You are sitting at a dinner table with your family. Every dish on the table is made of ingredients that came from different sources: fruits, vegetables, grains, water, the hands that prepared it. Each dish is connected to a wider network of life. When we understand this interconnectedness, we realize that our actions have far-reaching consequences. Finally, suffering. The Buddha taught that suffering is an inevitable part of life. But he also taught that suffering arises not from external circumstances, but from our attachment to things that are impermanent. Our suffering is a result of our desire for things to be fixed, stable, and permanent in a world that is inherently fluid and ever-changing. So, how do we cultivate wisdom in the midst of this? The Buddha provided the answer through deep meditation, mindfulness, and contemplation. Wisdom is not something that we can simply study or think about. It's something we experience directly. It arises from quieting the mind and seeing things clearly for what they are. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to notice the fleeting nature of each moment. We begin to see things as they truly are, impermanent, interconnected, and full of potential for transformation. I'd like to share a story about the Buddha to highlight this point. One day, a young monk approached the Buddha and asked, "Master, how can I attain wisdom?" The Buddha replied with a simple instruction: go into the forest, sit under a tree, and look at the river. Watch the water flow and understand that the river, like all things, is always moving, always changing. In that moment, you will gain wisdom. The young monk followed the Buddha's advice. He sat by the river, observing the water as it flowed continuously, never stopping, always changing. As he meditated on the river, he realized that life was like the flowing water, constantly changing, never still, and yet beautiful in its transience. Through this simple meditation, the monk gained deep insight into the nature of impermanence, and with that understanding, he found peace. Now that we've explored the essence of wisdom, let's dive into the role that meditation plays in cultivating this wisdom. Meditation is the gateway to deeper understanding, and it's through meditation that we begin to see the world in a new light. The role of meditation in cultivating wisdom. Meditation is at the heart of Buddhist practice. It is the tool that allows us to quiet the mind, calm our emotions, and see things as they truly are. In fact, meditation is often referred to as the path of wisdom because it helps us develop the clarity and insight that are necessary for understanding the nature of reality. There are many different forms of meditation in Buddhism, but they all share the same goal: to cultivate wisdom, compassion, and a deep sense of peace. Let's explore a few key types of meditation that are commonly practiced in Buddhism and how they help us develop wisdom. Mindfulness meditation, vipassana. This type of meditation focuses on developing mindfulness or awareness of the present moment. By observing our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment, we begin to see things as they truly are. This practice helps us understand the impermanence of all things, our thoughts, our emotions, and even our physical sensations. Through mindfulness, we gain insight into the nature of suffering and the cause of suffering. We begin to realize that our thoughts and feelings are not permanent. They arise and pass away, just like the clouds in the sky. This realization frees us from the grip of attachment and allows us to live more freely and wisely. Loving kindness meditation. This meditation focuses on cultivating compassion and loving kindness for all beings. It helps us overcome our natural tendency towards self-centeredness and opens our hearts to the interconnectedness of all life. By practicing loving kindness meditation, we develop the wisdom to see the world through the eyes of compassion, recognizing that all beings are worthy of love and kindness. Zazen meditation. Zazen is the seated meditation practiced in Zen Buddhism. It involves sitting in stillness, observing the breath, and letting go of all distractions. Through Zazen, practitioners cultivate a deep sense of presence and clarity. In the stillness, the mind can settle, and wisdom naturally arises. Meditation is the cornerstone of Buddhist practice, and through it, we learn to connect with our inner wisdom. The more we meditate, the more we begin to understand the true nature of reality. As the Buddha said, meditation brings wisdom. Lack of meditation leaves ignorance. To illustrate the power of meditation, let me share a story from the Buddha's own life. When the Buddha was meditating under the Bodhi tree, he faced many temptations and distractions. However, through perseverance and deep concentration, he reached enlightenment. In that moment, he understood the true nature of all things, the impermanence of life, the interconnectedness of all beings, and the cause of suffering. His meditation allowed him to break free from the cycle of birth and death, and in his enlightened state, he gained the wisdom to teach others how to do the same. With meditation, we begin to peel back the layers of illusion and see the world with greater clarity. But there is another powerful tool that we must develop alongside meditation: mindfulness. Let's now explore how mindfulness is key to living with wisdom. Mindfulness, the key to living with wisdom. Mindfulness is more than just a practice, it is a way of life. In Buddhism, mindfulness, or sati, is the quality of being fully present and aware of the moment, without attachment or judgment. It is the antidote to our tendency to live on autopilot, reacting automatically to life's challenges without truly understanding what is happening in the present moment. But what does it mean to live mindfully? It's about bringing awareness to every action we take, whether it's something as simple as eating, walking, or speaking. It's about slowing down enough to truly experience life, without being lost in the past or future. When we are mindful, we start to see the world more clearly. We notice the subtleties of each moment and can respond with wisdom rather than reacting out of habit. In Buddhism, mindfulness is often practiced through meditation, but it is just as powerful when applied to our daily activities. By cultivating mindfulness, we begin to recognize the fleeting nature of thoughts and emotions. We realize that they are not permanent and that we don't need to identify with them. This awareness allows us to live with more peace, acceptance, and wisdom. Let me offer an example. Imagine you are walking in a beautiful forest, surrounded by trees, flowers, and the sounds of birds. If you are walking mindfully, you will notice the scent of the flowers, the rustling of the leaves, and the warmth of the sun. You are fully present in that moment, not distracted by worries or thoughts about the future. Now, imagine that same walk, but without mindfulness. You may rush through the forest, lost in your thoughts, and miss all the beauty around you. This is the difference mindfulness makes. It helps us to truly experience life rather than merely exist in it. Through mindfulness, we can develop deep insight into the impermanence of all things. When we observe our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations with a sense of detachment, we begin to understand that these are all transient. We learn not to hold on to them, which is a key step toward wisdom. There's a beautiful story of a monk who was walking along a road and encountered a river. As he stood on the riverbank, he noticed a scorpion struggling to stay afloat. Without hesitation, the monk reached out and saved the scorpion. But as soon as he did, the scorpion stung him. He dropped the creature, only to immediately pick it up again, rescuing it once more. A passerby witnessed this and asked the monk, "Why do you keep saving the scorpion when it stings you every time?" The monk smiled and replied, "The scorpion's nature is to sting, but my nature is to help. I will not let its actions change my own." This story illustrates mindfulness, being aware of the situation, accepting what is, and responding with wisdom, regardless of the circumstances. Mindfulness allows us to see beyond the immediate reaction and connect with the deeper wisdom within. Mindfulness is a powerful practice that helps us live in harmony with the world around us. But there's another key quality that the Buddha emphasized on the path to wisdom: compassion. Let's now explore how compassion ties into wisdom and how it can transform our relationships with others. Compassion, or karuna, is the quality of caring for others' suffering and actively seeking to alleviate it. In Buddhism, compassion is not just a feeling of sympathy. It is a deep understanding of the shared nature of suffering. To truly cultivate wisdom, we must also develop compassion, for it is through compassion that we begin to understand the interconnectedness of all life. The Buddha taught that wisdom and compassion go hand in hand. Wisdom helps us see the true nature of reality, while compassion allows us to respond to others with kindness and understanding. Without compassion, wisdom can become cold and detached. Without wisdom, compassion can become misguided, leading us to act out of misplaced or unhelpful empathy. True compassion arises when we deeply understand the suffering of others and recognize that we are all bound together in this journey of life. When we cultivate compassion, we no longer see others as separate from ourselves. We see them as fellow travelers on the path of life, each struggling with their own challenges. Let me give you an example. Think about someone close to you who is going through a difficult time. Perhaps they are dealing with loss, illness, or a personal crisis. If we respond with compassion, We don't just offer them words of comfort. We listen deeply, offer support, and try to help them alleviate their suffering. But what's important here is that we do this not out of pity, but because we recognize that their suffering is also our suffering. We are connected through our shared humanity. Compassion doesn't mean solving other people's problems. It means being present with them in their suffering and offering what help we can. When we practice compassion, we soften our hearts, opening ourselves to the pain of the world. In doing so, we cultivate deeper wisdom. The Buddha once encountered a woman who had lost her child. Overcome with grief, she came to the Buddha and asked for his help. The Buddha told her to go into the village and find a mustard seed from a household that had never known death. The woman went from house to house, but no one could offer her a mustard seed. Eventually, she realized that every household had known death. Everyone had suffered the loss of a loved one. In this moment, she understood that suffering is universal, and it is through this recognition that compassion arises. The Buddha's compassion was not just in offering her a solution, but in helping her see the shared nature of her suffering. Through this, the woman found peace. Compassion is the heart of wisdom, and it is through developing both that we can transform our lives. But there's one final aspect of wisdom that we must explore: the importance of letting go. Let's take a look at how the Buddhist teachings guide us in the art of letting go. Letting go, the final step on the path to wisdom. Letting go is one of the most profound teachings in Buddhism. In many ways, it is the essence of wisdom. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from our attachment to things, whether they are physical possessions, relationships, or even our own beliefs and identities. The act of letting go is not about renouncing everything in our lives. It's about releasing the mental and emotional attachments that bind us to suffering. We learn to accept life as it is, without clinging to the past or trying to control the future. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means allowing things to flow naturally, without forcing them. The Buddha compared life to a river that is always flowing. Just as a river cannot hold onto the water that is past, we cannot hold onto the past. When we stop clinging to things, we experience the freedom of living in the present moment. But how do we let go? The first step is to recognize our attachments. These attachments are often subtle. They can be found in our desires, our fears, our preferences, and even in our identification with certain roles or identities. Once we recognize them, we can begin to detach ourselves, understanding that they are not permanent and that our true nature lies beyond them. Letting go also involves embracing impermanence. When we understand that everything is in constant flux, we can stop trying to hold on to things. This acceptance allows us to live more peacefully and wisely. There's a story of a man who lived in a small village. One day, he found a beautiful golden cup. He was so delighted by it that he couldn't bear to part with it, even for a moment. He carried it everywhere he went, afraid it might be taken from him. But over time, he realized that his attachment to the cup was causing him more suffering than joy. Eventually, he let go of it, realizing that true happiness did not lie in possessing things, but in living freely, without attachment. This story illustrates the importance of letting go, not just of material possessions, but of the mental attachments that cause us suffering. As we let go of attachments, we experience greater peace and freedom. But the journey toward wisdom is a lifelong process. Let's now conclude by reflecting on how we can integrate all of these teachings into our daily lives and continue on the path toward enlightenment. In today's video, we've explored the key aspects of Buddhist wisdom: understanding impermanence, practicing mindfulness, cultivating compassion, and the essential practice of letting go. These are the building blocks of wisdom that can transform our lives, helping us live with greater clarity, peace, and understanding. But wisdom is not something we attain overnight. It is a lifelong journey. Each step we take on the path of wisdom brings us closer to enlightenment. It requires practice, patience, and a deep commitment to seeing things as they truly are. As we continue on this path, let's remember the words of the Buddha: "A person who has attained wisdom is like a light in the darkness." With each step we take, we shine brighter, not only for ourselves but for all those around us. I hope today's teachings have inspired you to continue your own journey toward wisdom. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with others. Let's walk this path together, and may we all find peace and enlightenment on the way. Thank you for joining me on Universal Understanding. Until next time, may you live with wisdom and compassion.